the final panel discussion of the battery show in Detroit here in the Volta Lounge for this trip anyway. So thank you for you three for joining me. So just to introduce the panel, we have Jay Bellows, at the moment our most watched episode on YouTube.
Wow.
By the way.
Quite an honor, right?
8,000 views. So,
excellent.
Who's the president of Core Power. We have Paul Lichty, who's the CEO of Forge Nano and Forge Battery. And then on the end, Johnnie Stoker, the CEO and founder president of Ultion Technologies. Also a podcast guest as well. Sorry to get 8,000 views. It's still a very, very good episode. Very good episode. It's very good. So first of all, let's start with you, Paul. Congratulations on the DOE Grant. There's only a few beneficiaries, so
Thank you.
What does that mean for you now? Kind of what are the plans?
Yeah, no, it's we're all very excited. It's a tremendous win for the company. It does two big things for us. The first one being validation. Having the DOE go through not only our technology but our business model and our facility plans and be able to say that this makes sense is a huge benefit. And secondarily, for the capital raise and our customers, it shows them that we're on track and we're moving forward with this thing.
Nice, good stuff. Well, congratulations. Obviously, it was very recent, so I had to ask that question. And with the timing of the show, I think it's important to mention the upcoming election. So first of all, how will the results affect your individual plans, and how are you preparing? And then overall, what will the results mean for the US battery manufacturing industry as a whole? Okay,
Well, I mean, I think we're all kind of up in the air on what's going to happen. One of the things that we're hearing consistently is that the battery realm is relatively, I think both sides are for it for the most part. We're seeing a lot of the benefits going to red states, as we've seen over the last couple of years. And I think very clearly on both sides, the goal is to have U.S. manufacturing, right? So I think ultimately we're seeing, I'm not overly concerned with the election. I think both sides are going to be beneficial towards our industry. We received a $850 million conditional commitment from the DOE as well for our facility in Arizona, and that's been a hot topic, right? What's going to happen after the election, and not even so much after the election, but really January 4th, right? When there potentially could be a big change. But I think ultimately, both sides are going to be for this transition that we're in. Energy storage is batteries as a whole is transitional in what we're trying to achieve. So I think we've gone through this kind of vetting process with energy storage and on the EV side, but especially with energy storage, it's become a tool for utilities, right? So that's not going to go away, I don't think at all. So we're excited. I think one side probably will have more tariffs, and then the other side may have more programs, right? Ultimately, both help. All three of us, right, on the U.S. domestic manufacturing side of things.
Yeah. And for you, Paul?
Yeah, that was well said. I mean, I think it's a bipartisan issue. If we want energy security, we want manufacturing and jobs, we want a more competitive global landscape for kind of the next generation of how we make energy and use energy and transport things. Both sides of the aisle are supportive of that. We're in a purple state, with red congressional districts, but a blue governor, and on both sides they've come together and said that creating jobs, supporting a lot of our customer base in the military, that's important to them. So we are optimistic either way that this is going to continue to be an important thing for the U.S. to put resources towards and to build out.
And for you, Johnny?
Yeah, and I echo and support everything Paul and Jay already said. The number one difficult thing to deal with, especially since Ultion is early stage, is fundraising. And anytime there's uncertainty, investors slow down. So we'll just be glad once the election's over, because then regardless of what the outcome is, things will move forward much quicker and more decisively. But there's no question we need to rebuild infrastructure here in batteries and the materials. And I think those procedures, the processes, and the results you're starting to see already.
Good. That's reassuring from the three of you. I've been looking at other industries. I'll stick to batteries. I'll stay in batteries.
Yeah. It's a good choice.
Yeah, for sure. let's talk vertical integration. I know that we discussed it on our episodes before. And how big a factor is this in our overall success of battery manufacturing in the US? Is there an argument against it amongst you three?
I mean, we're vertical all the way through, right, to the end user, and then we operate systems for our customers too. So I think it's essential. I mean, we see a lot of deployments on the energy storage side. I mean, there's a big lawsuit right now in the Pacific Northwest, $130 million because the system never was operational. That's coming from a company doesn't have verticality in their offerings, right? So for us, I think it's a big deal. But I mean, certainly for the three of us on the supply chain side, that's very hard right now, right? And the IRA's goal was to bring in, kind of totality in this. And I think on the very upstream of, for battery manufacturing, this is going to be a long road, right? Everybody kind of has this perception that it's really all about mining. It's not. It's really processing becomes the bigger issue, right? Like using lithium as an example, lithium is everywhere. It's not a rare earth element, right? But it's the processing. Yeah. 95% of the batteries in the world, or maybe more, are actually coming from China. So it makes sense that the upstream is there. So we're trying to find ways to get away from that. We have to do that here, and that's really the long process, I think. Mm-hmm. More than anything else on the manufacturing side, what we're doing at Core, building our own cells and modules, I think it's a huge step. Don't get me wrong, but the bigger hurdle still yet to come, which is the upstream, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, with how young the industry is in the U.S., it's difficult to get to full vertical integration across the line. So that's where focusing on your partnerships up and downstream, being very collaborative, which we've seen a lot of the U.S. companies are really focused on. We're either building out the whole ecosystem together, from the mining and raw materials to the pack integration and end users, or we're going to stand up some pillars that may not be able to survive. So I think it's important for companies right now to be vertical in their understanding of the market and the technologies that go into it. So we've got great expertise in the materials manufacturing and processing, and we're bringing that to cell manufacturing. But it's a heavy lift to try and do the whole thing. Especially if you don't have a background in it. Sure. Of course, been doing the pack integration for a long time, which is great. But I think we and a lot of the other companies in the space we all know each other, and I think we all realize we're either doing this together or it may not happen. So it's all about that partnership and being as vertical as you can with all those partners, and until a truly vertical approach can kind of make sense.
Nice.
Yeah, well, and your question, at least part of it was, is there an argument against specialization? And so I'm not making this argument, but, you go back to basic economics, and specialization produces, the leadership or the best products, a competitive advantage. I used to believe that more than I do now, for sure, because you look at the things both Jay and Paul said, and they're important. And one thing about batteries is I tell people it depends. So when it comes to integration, it depends. And, one of our hallmarks is vertical integration. But how far do you go? And I think that's where it depends. How big are you? What are you in? If it's EV, I think the more vertical integration, the better. But how does that take place? Maybe it is partnerships, strategic investments, but they've really got to manage their margin stack. Whereas the more specialty you become, the harder it is to, hey, we're going to mine our material, we're going to refine it, we're going to make our powder, our cells, our packs, our systems. That's a lot to do, in the specialty market. So, you're going to have to manage integration and focus on, what is your market? What are your customers? What performance are you looking into? But certainly, China's got a long way and reduced their costs a lot by vertically integrating. So I think we're going to see more of that as we are seeing.
Very good. Yeah, I agree. I think particularly for the US, it's critical. We've talked about it a lot, and it's a fascinating element. So good. Next, let's talk about locations. We'll start with Vegas. So obviously we're going with Vegas, Phoenix, Nevada, and Raleigh, North Carolina. So when selecting a location for battery manufacturing, how do you rank the top priorities? We're looking at available talent, climate to build the batteries, state policies and governments. All are important, but how do you typically rank them? And I guess this is good advice for anybody who's actually looking at what location to set their battery.
Yeah, well, Vegas, baby. So,
entertainment as well, maybe number 4 on that.
Yeah, and I would add that there are other things like transportation, access to ports, utility costs, the availability of green energy, right? Those are all factors. So there are so many factors, it really is hard to just say one place is best. I would say there are better places in the U.S. for the talent pool and the experience pool than Vegas. I would say there's no better place climate-wise. There's no better place for access to the raw materials. Ultimately, as the supply chain builds with the availability of lithium, the access to ports and transportation, and partly too for flights to and from Vegas. It's one, if not the biggest destination for all airlines. So we can get cheap airfare, relatively cheap, anywhere in the world for us or for people visiting. The thing I like the best about Vegas, though, is the climate. The dry, it is a little hot, but to build cells at least and to build powder, you need to manage moisture. We already manage it. We have bone dry days, basically some summers. It's amazing how dry it is compared even to Phoenix when you look at, humidity and monsoons. But, so for processing, I think it's a big plus. In the end, though, we're going to go where it best meets the needs of the business and our customers. And so we may end up building some factories in other locations to be near the end use customer.
Yeah, I mean, we ran a national search to try and find the right location, and there are, as you highlighted, different factors, but I'll say the one major one comes down to the people. People run the factory, people make the product. When you're building something that is a high-tech, difficult to manufacture product, you need the best people, and you need the best system and infrastructure to train those people. And that's what we felt Raleigh had in spades, partially because of RTP, but the university systems, everything with the community colleges, the trade schools. It's that big list of employees with skill sets focused on manufacturing that we just thought they do such a great job in Raleigh. It made the most sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with both these guys, right? I mean, all those things come into play. For us, it was, people as well. We're integrated with the schools, Arizona State University, a lot of the community colleges local, and we have another facility in Vermont as well. So we're integrated with the colleges there. We're trying to build curriculum. I think one of the things that doesn't get talked about very often is that in technology, kind of the emerging battery world is still kind of new, right? So there's not a ton of experienced talent out there. I think everybody's kind of learning still in the process, which is exciting, but it's also challenging to find the level of experience and expertise that you're looking for often. So some of it is on the fly. So we chose Buckeye, Arizona, just outside of Phoenix, and the state is great. The town is great. We had to walk through. We work with Arizona Public Service, right? So getting power there, getting gas there, getting water there is all huge. And those dry environments, water is one thing that doesn't get a lot of news, but it's so incredibly important. In Arizona, in Arizona, getting water is not easy, right? So working with the municipal government and the entities there to provide that was big too. So we did a big, as Paul said, we did a big national search as well, and it just so happened that that area worked really well for us, and we've had a couple of other companies come in too, trying to do the same thing. So there'll be some competition there, but ultimately, Buckeye was a good choice for us.
It's we won't touch as much on it today, but yeah, the talent issue is huge, not just even at a manufacturer level, but also the people who've taken pilot line all the way through to mass scale and all the way through to commercialization. Those people are typically from China or South Korea. In terms of somebody coming from a US university and coming through that system, it's still very early on, 5-10 years maybe, it'll be quite different. So, yeah, a lot of priorities, but good conversation there. Johnnie, you've obviously got some very experience with K2 Energy in China, working with the LFP, of course. So talk us through that, and more specifically, what the US can learn from China when it comes to battery manufacturing.
Sure. And so stop me if I run too long here. There's a lot of experience
So
here.
it's got to catch a fly, so not a pressure.
Yeah, I would appreciate it.
Okay. Honestly, this goes back to 2003 and with Valence. So my first trip to China was with Valence, and I lived in China and set up powder manufacturing, and we were contract manufacturing cells with that powder, and then we were building the battery packs in another facility in Suzhou, China. And within 3 months of being there, we attended our first battery show conference, kind of like this in China. And, it wasn't really that big. And realized, China was, so that's 20 years ago, right? I mean, we had so much more talent and capability and technology in America at the time. But as I went around the show, there were maybe 3 or 4 people, oh, hey, we're going to make LFP powder. And so we were already making it at Valence. Just a few months later, going to another show in another city, there were 10. A few months later, there were like 20 exhibiting. And that plus other things. I got back to Valence management and I said, look, we're going to get steamrolled if we don't get going. And, history shows what happened, right? So, what I would say is what we're doing to rebuild infrastructure here, retrain the talent. And I got to say, maybe I shouldn't mention the company, but I was offended when this certain company that's getting a lot of support to go to Phoenix, not a U.S. company, I'm talking about, I'm sure, Jay. Mm-hmm. Oh, we need to bring 500 engineers from our country because we can't get the talent in Phoenix, Arizona. I've lived there. I've worked there. Some of my relatives have attended the schools there. The talent is there. It has to do with culture, managing people. And yeah, I mean, specifics about batteries, we've got to catch up again. But China 20 years ago knew nothing about building lithium-ion batteries commercially, right? I believe in the American spirit, the capability, and so in the end, we're going to be fine. But it does take, a little push, rebalance the playing field here for the incentives. I'm glad to see them coming out. I mean, people need it. And the number one thing is the investment. So our investment community is still gun shy from what I've seen. And so they need to know we're going to see this through. And as long as we have that, I believe, we're going to be successful and at least bring a balance to the world battery economy. So.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, good point around immigration. It's super important to kind of add perspectives and add skill, and that's super important in the battery world still. But yeah, in terms of how many gigafactories there will be in the demand, we can't bring everyone over. That we have to upskill, as you say. Whether that's wet or dry process, we'll see. Thank you, Johnnie. A tough question, but what advantage does the USA have over China when it comes to scaling battery manufacturing, getting this right? And then maybe a different kind of caveat to that: identifying customers and application areas and users.
So I think an advantage we have is we've adopted the technology quickly, right? Especially on the ESS side. I think, our grid is antiquated. I think Johnnie talked about that earlier, infrastructure. So we have a real need. We have programs in place that help push this along. Not, and I think on all levels, which is huge, right? I mean, we have, both been recipients of the process, let's say, right, through the IRA and other legislation, and then we have the mid-level, right? So there's the manufacturing credits that go along with it, and then at the end level too, with developers and others, off-takers having pretty significant tax credits as well. So I think that's what's gonna help us. I do think that this is going to be a significant hurdle. This is, I'm with you, Johnny, for sure. U.S. ingenuity is not something to be messed with, but at the same time, we're fighting, a pretty big battle. And I mean, just for an example, CATL is the largest battery manufacturer in the world, got a $792 million government subsidy last year, right? Like, that's no joke, right? I mean, the IRA came out and said 10% domestic content kicker, right? And CATL said $20 per kilowatt hour price reduction, right? Like a week later, right? So, so we have a hurdle here, right? And I think one of the things I'd like to see, certainly to assist in that, is, and it's not just, and this goes along with what Johnny said with bringing engineers over too, kind of on a little bit of a different level, but I'd like to see the legislation, the IRA, support U.S. companies. So not just bringing the battery manufacturing here, I think that's fine, but that's not energy independence. They're just manufacturing here, which is great. Jobs are great, don't get me wrong, and that's a huge political entity in and of itself. But ultimately, that's not energy independence. You're still dependent upon companies from Asia, right? So what we really need, and I say Asia because of the other company you were talking about in Phoenix, but ultimately what I would like to see, and I think will truly propel us to where we need to be, is helping companies like Forge Nano and others, like giving them true independence. Other companies coming over from overseas shouldn't get the same benefits that the U.S. companies get. That's independence, right?
Yep.
Or providing core power, a U.S. owned company, that's independence, right? If we're dependent upon other companies just doing it here, that's not independent. So that's one thing I think we definitely need to focus on.
Well, and along those same lines, I mean, what are we talking about when we're talking about that energy independence? It's not just the manufacturing and the jobs. If we're going to continue to innovate in this market, if we're going to continue to have the automotive jobs and the large infrastructure jobs and the know-how here, you have to be building those things here. You have to have people in it, at every detail to fully understand how it all works, and then to innovate around it. That's what we do really well in the U.S. But if all of those jobs are overseas, all that manufacturing goes away, we lose our advantage in that innovation cycle with these things. So I think, the U.S., I think we're in a good position, actually. For many decades, we had manufacturing hubs here, and these are old factories using less efficient technologies, and funding opens up overseas, and all of a sudden, these factories, just from the technology advantage and the maturity of manufacturing, they can build better, faster, more efficient plants overseas. It's kind of the reverse now, where, the LFP factories that were built 10, 15 years ago in Southeast China, they're not going to be as efficient. They're not going to be able to bring in newer technologies and manufacturing capabilities and automation that companies here, with the right funding, are going to be able to do. But it does take recognition both from the government that this is an important industry, and if we're not leading in this space, we're going to be falling behind. It's important that the financial communities can see the benefit, the robustness of the support that we get nationally, and the financial upside that we can do this here. We can be highly competitive and we can make money at it. And our particular system of meritocracy and innovation is going to allow us to continue to stay in a leadership position. And then, everybody else, all of us here, then raising our hands and saying we're gonna go do this. We think it's important, and we think we can do a really good job at it.
And execute.
Yeah.
Execution.
Execution is always where it comes down.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I may speak to our competing with China, we're certainly not at a disadvantage in the long run. I agree with the concept, and I think Forge Nano is a perfect example of new technology, new ideas, and now, as far as I'm concerned, proven, but now needs to be scaled, needs to be executed, right? And And America's always had that. You look at the Olympics, how many of those foreign athletes train in the U.S.? I think the same applies to academics. How many of these engineers, scientists trained in the West, let's not just say the U.S., but we've got that engine. But let's ask this, how many Americans want to work in a factory? And so thank goodness, though, with the development of AI, more robotics, it used to be the fear, oh, robots are going to replace my job. Now it's like, hey, I want a robot to do that job, right?
Sure.
So, but that's going to take time too. So, and we've lost the edge, I would say, in the hands-on operation, operating equipment, operating, processes. I came from the chemical industry, and we had plenty of people 30 years ago, but we have to retrain and find those workers that are willing to do a job where I've got to go to the office because it's a plant, it's a factory. Somebody has to be there to do that job for now. Maybe one day it'll be all remote and robots, but not today, and not for, I guess, in 10 or 20 years. So I don't know, maybe you guys see it different, but so we can compete, no question. We just need to start again, and the incentives are helping, like these guys said. So.
Well, you said the word compete, right? Competition, there's a level playing field, and that's the thing that I think we're realizing hasn't been level, and we're starting to see that course correction to just lay it out there so that we're all operating under the same conditions and assumptions.
Yeah.
As soon as we can be there within the global industry, I think America's in a great situation.
And we're responding already, right? Like the tariffs, the new tariffs that were announced a few months ago, a 25% tariff on ESS batteries starting in 2026. That's very helpful for all of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the government's responding while also having the really tough job of saying we really do need them now too, right? We don't have a ton going on. So we have to be careful with timing and how we get that accomplished. But it's definitely in the crosshairs, right? I mean, I think the government sees it and understands, and that's why we're all sitting here, quite frankly.
Yeah, if I can add one more comment. Who was the vice president of operations making the first battery valence made in China? Remember, I said we were doing contract manufacturing. Robin Zeng, the CEO of CATL. So I know him, worked with him, and look where he's ended up now. And good for him and the support he got. But we can do that. And especially these younger guys, they can do that. So I'm getting close to the end of my career, but I'm willing to help the younger guys get trained, get experienced, and let's execute and get there.
Mm-hmm. This would be awesome. Really, really good. Like, honestly, an honor to do this here. I came here last year by myself. Actually, there's 4 of us here this year, and just the scale of the show. It's nobody to Detroit this year. It's huge. There's going to be another one in Atlanta. I think there's a new show being put on now. So my kind of question was to kind of summarize what's the outlook for this. It's super positive. You guys just did that. Good luck with the bench. I know all of you have got amazing plans ahead, and good luck and thank you again. Enjoy the rest of the show and stay flight day. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jamie.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.